Hello and welcome to day number 2 of the 5th annual IXL conference. My name is Liam Lauren. I'm a second year architectural and building technology student, as well as the BCIT Student Association Chair of Transportation, Construction, and the Environment. This conference is brought to you by the BCIT Student Association. The BCITSA is a non-profit organization that advocates for students and provides student-centered, responsive, and proactive services that support and enhance student life. We would also like to thank our partners, sponsors, BCIT's Alumni Association and HarborLink Container Services. We are excited for the event today, fabulous speakers, networking, and several prizes. Before we start, I would like to recognize that I am an invited guest on the lands of the Coast Salish Nations. This year's conference is focused on overcoming challenges and directing your future. Yesterday, we heard from the fabulous keynote speaker, Darren Jacklin, on turning obstacles into opportunities. If you missed it, you can rewatch the recording on demand on the replay tab. Today, we have an amazing line of panelists joining us to discuss how you can leap into your future. I would like to introduce the panel moderator and panelist, Jess Tang. Jess is an experienced coach, passionate mentor, and TEDx speaker. Jess is a program director for SHAD UBC. Connie Lin is a registered professional recruiter, project manager, neuroscientist, data scientist, and entrepreneur. She is currently a development manager at Electronic Arts. Hannah Rangeley Davis is a proud BCIT alumnus from the HR Diploma program in 2018 and the BBA program in 2020. She is a CPHR candidate and people and culture consultant at Grant Thornton, where she also takes on coaching and training facilitation. Sonny Thend is a seasoned technology executive who brings visionary strategies, transformation, and pivotal innovates to lead organizations he engages with. He has a record of fast track promotions with 25 plus years of overseeing technology in global organizations with multiple sites and locations. Join me with welcoming Jess to the stage.
Hello, and thank you for that, Liam. And hello, fellow panelists, Connie, Sunny, and Hannah. I know, Liam, you gave us some quick intros, but I'd love to dive in to hear more about each of you a little bit more. And so if each of you we can go down the line and introduce yourself. Let's hear about your career origin story, what brought you to where you are. What are you doing now for your career? Just so we can get a little bit of context for each of you. And so, Connie, why don't you start us off?
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Connie. So how do I introduce myself? I usually call myself the jack of all trades, but an expert of none. Right now, I'm currently a development manager at Electronic Arts, the gaming company. If you don't know, they're next door to BCIT. My formal training is neuroscience. I study genetic components of behavior related to alcohol substance use for my PhD. So that's always a fun conversation when I go to the pub. What do you do? Oh, I'm an alcohol researcher. Like, you're kidding. No, I'm not. It's always fun conversation. So besides that, I'm also data scientist. Well, actually, that's come from my PhD. My PhD's research is heavily on data. And then I do recruiting on the side, and I funded nonprofits. My career journey is definitely not a straight line. And I really hope that my story can inspire you to try things and not be afraid to try different things that you might never heard of, or so it started from artists. I started as a fine art artist. I went to professional art school, and came to Canada. There's no similar education path here, so I don't know, one thing led to the other. I become interested in science, and I I spent 1 year in Kwantlen University trying to get into UBC because I want to be a veterinarian. Then I finally got to UBC, and I don't know, maybe party too much, so I don't think I'm gonna get into med school. And I discovered research at the time in the third year. When I graduated with Bachelor of Science, I was completely terrified. I have a degree that has nothing practical I can use to find a job. I actually applied to BCIT but didn't get in. So you guys should be proud of yourself. You were better than me. You got in BCIT. And yeah, I spent a year working in the lab and got into master and PhD degree. And then, of course, like 15 years later, spending in the lab, and I have a PhD finally. So during my PhD, I did a internship for PhD program. They have different type of internship. They call it fellowship, but it's basically like a co-op. I work in a gaming company then, so you can see my story come to a full circle. And then I also work in the Ministry of Health, working on the addiction policy. So it's the opiate crisis. Just before the opiate crisis started, I was writing opiate policy. And then I tried management consulting, got to a final round of interview at Boston Consulting, and then got into politics. I got dragged into running for election in 2017 MLA election. And after that, I started real job in College of Pharmacists in BC. So we write regulations for pharmacy and pharmacists. And then I did a data science diploma in BrainStation because I'm like, I need some paper to show I actually can do data science. And then I'm supposed to go back to gaming because I want to do data and gaming again. But I got lured into this big pharma. It's called AbbVie. But the drug that I represent as a technical expert, you will know, is Botox. So I joined because how can you say no to Botox? It's such a wonderful neuroscience drug. It's right down to my PhD training. But then 2 years later, actually just 3 weeks before I joined EA, Electronic Art, back to where I love the most, which is the gaming industry. Nonprofit. I started 2 student government in UBC and was the president of Graduate Student Society in UBC. So I really have a close appreciation of the BCIT Student Association. I know what you guys do. Don't keep it up, because I learned all my soft skills from student government. And now I am serving. Previously I served on Canadian Mental Health Association for 8 years, and now my new nonprofit is Vancouver Metropolitan Orchestra. So I'm gonna stop here, and you can have a flavor of me later.
I feel like we needed a map to just keep track of the twists and turns in that, both across sectors and industries and educational paths. Even one of those small sectors, I think we can dig deep in, and I think a lot of the audience can take some value of. So we'll definitely look forward to hearing more about how you got from point A to point Z throughout that journey. Sunny, I'm going to pass it over to you. What is your career journey and your origin story?
Yeah, so I started my career in a technical role. So I started as a help desk person and doing data operations. And I was it was kind of a conscious decision for me because I wanted to make my way up the ladder and kind of understand all the pieces of it. And I got to say, it pays off. My conversations with my staff are fairly quick. And I don't know what's going on with my camera. It's got a mind of its own right now, so bear with that. But starting from the bottom and kind of learning all those different things, I think were really helpful. Eventually, I decided I wanted to go into management because technology, frankly, the syntax kept changing, but the underlying system was the same, and it got kind of boring. So I thought humans are interesting. I want to manage them, and so you move into a role where now it's endless variables, and it's been an amazing challenge. And so continuing down that path, I spent about 8 years with a large consulting company, and then they were kind of winding down the business I was involved in, and I decided to leave IT, and I decided to start my own coaching company, and that was 2011. So I, when I got certified as an executive coach, started building up my client base, and realized I missed the teamwork. I missed actually kind of achieving big things. I would talk to people and they were achieving things. So I was, there was a gap there. So I came back into IT, but those skill sets came with me, and it's been amazing to be able to apply them and help my teams grow, as well as I have some coaching clients on the side, so I can continue maintaining that as a side hustle. And then the last 6 years, I've been at a company called Quadreal. I joined this organization. They had 6 employees in 2016. We're 1,200 today.
Wow.
And it's been awesome helping that kind of grow and build from the ground up. And my role right now is I'm an SVP. I run the application side of IT, but my boss also left us in October, so I'm also doing his job. So I'm busy enough. That's it.
Well, it sounds like you definitely have your plate full. So thank you for taking the time this afternoon to join us and this audience here today. All right, Hannah, share with us a little bit about what you're up to and how you got there.
Thanks so much, Jess, and hi, everyone. So my name is Hannah. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm a people and culture consultant at Grant Thornton, as well as a BCIT alumnus. So I graduated from BCIT's HR diploma program in 2018. And from there, I decided to get straight into work and take my BBA courses part-time, where I graduated from their program in 2020. When I was at BCIT, there was so many opportunities, just like this one, where we got to network and connect with others. And one way to be able to do that, I was at the Human Resources Student Association group, where I took part in that. So, great opportunities to get involved. So you should all recognize that you're all taking the time today to get involved in this event. But aside from all that, I'm a lifelong learner, and I'm currently pursuing my certificate in diversity, equity, and inclusion from UBC, where I get to learn a little bit more about how I can best show up for everyone around me and make lasting impacts on the work environments that my colleagues experience. And how I got there was, so I started out looking for any job I possibly can that was in human resources. And it was at a time where it was not really the candidates market. And so it's quite difficult to find my first job. But what I did was I took up a contract, which was originally for 6 months at the Port of Vancouver in their human resources department. Did I know that this was going to be the first and best job for me at that time? Not at all. I was hoping for a full-time permanent job, just like anybody else would, graduating from their program, but it was a difficult market out there. And so I just had to make the best call for what best fit for me in my time of my life. And that was honestly the best decision I ever made. It set me up for the career that I've had so far. It opened up my eyes to a different industry, and an important one, especially since we're in a port city, where I had no idea the types of intricacies and types of supply chain issues that, currently we're experiencing at this moment. So, but from there, it led me to another contract job where I got the opportunity to work at Seaspan, the shipbuilding company, marine transportation company that is located in North Vancouver. And I started out as a recruitment coordinator, and this was an 8-week contract. But I was very eager to make this one stick. And from there, I was able to, get involved in conversations, and turns out they were able to offer me that full-time position, which was definitely a memorable moment of my life. But aside from that, I moved into a mobility coordinator role, which you might be already asking, what is that? I had no idea when I took that opportunity up, but it was the best opportunity for me, and it made me expand my horizons on different areas of HR that I didn't really have exposure to beforehand. And it was really the best opportunity for me to take up, which led me honestly to realizing which area of HR I wanted to get into and how I wanted to pivot my career. And that led me to getting my current role, which is at Grant Thornton, as a people and culture consultant. And so you might be wondering what this means. So essentially my role is to support our leaders in developing our colleagues to make sure that they are living a successful career that is most meaningful to them. And along those lines, I get to, of course, support the cyclical cycles that happen on a yearly basis and all the HR processes that occur. But my most favorite part that I quite enjoy is being able to work with our colleagues and support them in their development, to work through challenges and make a lasting impact on their professional development. So that kind of takes me to where I am, and I'll pass it back to Jess.
Amazing. Thank you to all three of you for sharing that. I think there's such a common theme here, and that none of you could have predicted that you'd be here way back when, whether that first job all the way to here, or when you graduated all the way to here. And I hope that rings, that theme gets caught with our audience here, that you don't have to have it all figured out, especially when you're that new grad. And I think it's really important to see that, as you guys were telling your story, that most people's career journey only makes sense in hindsight in 2020. But in the moment, you're pivoting, you've got 8-week contracts. How do you turn that into something else? It's definitely a wild ride. To give our audience and the rest of our panelists a little bit of background about me. So I graduated from UBC Sauder School of Business with a Bachelor's of Commerce. And like Connie and Hannah, you guys said, I was really involved in student government and student engagement at the university, and so much so that I really didn't want to leave being a student. And that led me, I loved being a student. I loved being a student leader, involved in all these extracurriculars. And like you said, Connie, that's where I took away so many of my soft skills and leadership skills, that when it came time to grad, I had no idea what outside university walls, what that looked like. And so I decided to stay and not pursue a career like outside the school. And I actually got a job hired at the Sauder School of Business in their alumni engagement department. So I essentially got paid to do that extracurricular stuff, which was like the dream job at the time for me. So I worked in the alumni engagement office. My job was to connect students with alumni and help students figure out how alumni can best help them through mentorship or networking and otherwise. At the time, every year I would take a side contract every July working for an organization known as SHAD. And what SHAD is, it's a national nonprofit where high school students from all across the country get to live at a host university campus for the entire month of July. And every day they're exposed to lectures, labs, workshops, team building, different academic disciplines. So every July, I would live in first-year residence with 50 high school students, and I loved every second of it. I would take my vacation time from my full-time job to do that every July. And after 2 years of that, my roommate looks at me and says, "You love what you do every July. Why don't you take what you do 1 month of the year and turn it into your 12-month?" And that was a big aha moment for me. And so I ended up, based on the advice of a mentor, emailing the CEO of SHAD with a very big ask saying, "Here's where I know your strategic priorities are. Here's how I think I can help you get there." And he calls me up 2 days later saying, "What took you so long? Can you move out? Can you move out here? We'll make a position for you." And so I shifted that and moved to work for SHAD full time as the recruitment department, going around high schools all across Canada, giving presentations about what we do. And then that job was in Waterloo, Ontario, and coming from the beautiful mountains and ocean here, it was definitely the dream job, but very, very far from the dream city. And so after 2 years of doing that and doing a lot of travel in that role, I went to my boss with a different ask, again, based on the help of my mentor to how to craft that ask, to say, "Hey, I'm traveling about 6 months of the year. Do you really need me in the office? Can I move this role remotely to Vancouver? And here's all the ways I think I can still make that happen." And this was pre-pandemic, when work from home was not a thing. And so it was a really big ask to make to my employer at the time. They said yes. I moved back to Vancouver. Lo and behold, the pandemic hit and shut down all my travel. And so the part about my job that I loved was stripped away. And so I found it a really tough pandemic year, which forced me to really evaluate what are the things that bring me joy in my career and what are the things that I really want. And what became very, very clear to me, that sitting at a desk all day wasn't wasn't very fulfilling for me, and I needed more interaction either client side, or I just needed to be talking to people all the time. After a lot of different career searching, I've done a big pivot. And now I'm a certified personal trainer and group fitness instructor. So my love for coaching, development, youth, facilitating, it's all there, just in a very different avenue now. Okay. So that's lovely audience. That's a little bit of background on all four of us as panelists. And I'll jump into our first question of today. Without a doubt, and I think I just want to, without a doubt, I think COVID has shifted the way we live, work, and socialize. And certainly a lot of our young grads and students now are trying to navigate finding a career or work in a pandemic situation. So there's been a definitely shift in remote work, and formal traditional avenues of networking events and coffee chats and how we generally tend to interview and things like that aren't there anymore, and how they navigate their job hunt. And so I'd love to hear from each of you, how has the past 2 years shifted how you think about it, how you manage your career, whether that's networking or dealing with remote work, etc. And so if anyone want to jump in, please just dive right into that first question.
Yeah, I can jump in. So, so I've continued to network throughout this time, and actually, I'd say even accelerated to some extent, because I knew not having that face-to-face interaction and how challenging it would be, and so more phone calls. Video calls sometimes, but not necessarily. People are sometimes a little more comfortable with the phone calls. I found they're easier to do. You can take a call when you're driving, and things like that. And so, but I just not letting up and really being conscious about it. So when I used to fly, I would kind of scroll through my contacts and look for people. Oh, I haven't talked to that person in a while, and I would give them a call. Like not from the plane, obviously, but. Just making note of things like that, and just being conscientious about it, and knowing that it's part of something you want to do, and keep that connection open. My issue here is lighting, by the way, just so you know. I'm in Toronto, and it's dark and it can't keep up. The camera gets confused, but I'll play with it.
I really like what you said there, Sonny, and just the matter of being conscientious and being just mindful of the fact that you want to keep in touch with individuals, and putting it to top of mind to reach out to individuals that maybe you haven't spoken to in a while. But also, what comes to my mind and how I've experienced COVID and maintained my network, and how it's affected, how I shift my career. Something that comes to mind for me is there's been so many more webinars being available. There have been so many more opportunities to be able to widen our network in a global sense. And I think that those opportunities have become so much more readily available to us that they weren't available to us prior to COVID, because all of those networking opportunities were in person. And which were great. Obviously, there's benefits to both. But I think that what I really found to be beneficial to me was just signing up for those free webinars that I saw that would be on a topic that might be of interest to me. And once you can just, you don't have to, typically there's just a panel like this where you can be listening and so forth. But what I found to be helpful to me to widen my network would be for maybe one or two of the individuals that I felt really resonated with me, or I really connected with. I would make note of their name and then reach out to them on LinkedIn and say, hey, I participated in, I attended this event. I really loved what you had to say with regards to this. I would love to have the opportunity to connect with you over LinkedIn if you're comfortable. Obviously, keeping in mind that I think there's like a 120 word character limit when you don't know somebody on LinkedIn, which makes it very difficult. I'm going to be honest with you, to make a personalized note if you don't have a premium feature. However, though, I found that for me really continued to expand my network, while also providing me with that opportunity to continuously learn from others, which really energizes me.
Amazing.
Cool. So I will tell you guys start out first, like two of my jobs that I started during COVID times. So interview COVID, and I find interview during COVID times with Zoom is a lot easier than in person. It's a lot less intimidating, like a screen rather than you can feel the 3-4 humans around you. I'm like, oh my God, I'm shaking everywhere, right? So I find job seeking okay. Networking though, I would say, I always tell people, especially I'm what people call like glamorized introvert. I might look extrovert, but I'm not. It's really taxing to me. So I don't really do networking. If you send me to a networking cocktail, I'll be like, can I leave now? So what I do networking, but I do have a big network if you look at my LinkedIn. Why? Because I do a lot of nonprofit. I do a lot of helping people out stuff. And through doing things with people in nonprofit, people not only know you in a deeper level, they also know how you work. And those are the people who can write you great references, not the people you go in and cocktail party and say, hi, bye. And then next day, I don't remember who you are. So really consider that way as a networking opportunity as well to really do something and then build your skill at the same time. Another note I want to add in terms of my job during COVID is really hard in terms of establishing client relationship, because my previous job is about taking care of the doctors who need scientific advice for Botox across Western Canada. Without the person to person is really very tough. Those type of relationships are harder.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, go for it.
Gonna pop on there. I really like what you said there, Connie, with regards to like what I was pulling out with what you said was I got a sense of relationship development, and I would agree with that. You know, networking at events where you do have that brief connection. You know, it's up to you essentially at the end of the day to go after that. You know, to maintain that relationship, and you know, for an example, like Connie brought up, was that nonprofit. I think that, you know, from my experience, I think that if you invest your time into developing a relationship and showing up as yourself and, you know, not just being super task oriented, but just showing up as a human and, you know, trying to put time towards nurturing a relationship, you'll end up getting a lot more out of that relationship, but also learning from that relationship and being able to build up on that with people. It's a win-win circumstance where, you know, you get to have this this new relationship in your life versus just a contact.
I would like to add one more quick thing is when you're looking for a job, tell everyone you're looking for a job. But I was advised by HR people that don't put like I'm looking for work circle on my LinkedIn. I didn't, but I wouldn't tell people who I just met, oh, I'm looking. That's just like, oh, you know, it changes the flavor of the new relationship. But I would tell everybody that I trust that I'm looking.
There's such a, I think there's two things that I've heard there is, you know, all three of you talked about like, it's not just networking, but it's actually relationship building. That networking is how you can maybe meet them. You see them at an event or you send that first LinkedIn, but what actually makes it meaningful is, like you said, Sunny, making the phone call. Okay, it's not just I know you, but can I have a real, honest conversation with you? And that's the difference. And that onus is on you. And I'm sure for many of you know, maybe if you're new to this or you're a current student, it can be really, really intimidating to reach out to these professionals. And I love what you said, Hannah, because I think it is true is the minute you do reach out to them, you're there to have a conversation, and they're not there. These professionals aren't going to say yes to agreeing to a phone conversation for you because they want you to impress them. They just want you to be real. And so can we focus less on, hey, here's all my credentials and here's why I think I'm really, really great, but instead, hey, I really want to learn from you and here's what I'm curious about. And there's such a vulnerability in that curiosity to say, I don't know everything, but I really want to learn and I really value your time. Or, hey, I am looking for a job, and have that kind of vulnerable conversation to say, this is where I'm at. And I think people are really open to that because they want to, whether it's online or not, people crave that connection. And I don't think that that's ever gone away. We're neurologically, biologically hardwired for that connection. Yeah.
Just can I add one more thing? So, and it's okay to not network with everybody. I network with people I like, that I have a connection with. I don't force it. If there's nothing there, like don't make it homework. There's lots of people out there.
Really,
like
really
that.
good point.
I couldn't agree more.
It's a quality game, not a quantity game.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Switching gears back into the way that all of you have navigated your careers. Can you talk a little bit about what has been the best career advice that you've followed that has remained true today? And can you give a little context in how you applied that piece of advice? And I share this question. I'm trying to get this out early because I think with panels or when you have really great speakers, it's like, what's that one piece of advice you want to share to people? And I just don't want that to get lost. So I just want to throw that out there kind of early on in our conversations of what one thing that you wish people take away from, or one thing that's been really, really valuable for your career, and how did you apply that?
I'll jump in. I think I have to make a disclaimer. This might not work for everyone, but as a person, you probably can tell that I like to try everything. Oh, everything is interesting. And then you'll get the career advice that, oh, you need to focus. That's how you get far in your career. But that's not how it works for me. Doesn't work for my personality. And if you are like that too, it's okay. And I didn't know that's okay until I talked to I think it's our founder of Brain Research Center in UBC. That's the only center I heard so far has fundraised more money than we need to build a building. He was like that. I asked him this question, is that okay? Should I be focusing? I think I'm juggling too many things. He's like, I'm like that, and look at where I am. So what I always tell my mentees, just try it. You don't try it, you don't know if you like it or hate it. Like policy, neuroscientists and policy, that's totally almost opposite thing. But I was dragging to trying it, and I ended up loving it. You never know until you try.
I really like that, Connie. I definitely think that is some strong advice to be told, but also to actually put into play. I've definitely found that is something that I can relate to in my career. Absolutely. For myself, what comes to mind is that when I was looking for a job, I was told to look for a job where the company values align with my own. And I think that this is a type of statement that can be really difficult to figure out in the position that a candidate typically is in, because you look on their website and you try to you go to that values page, you look on all of these review channels and just try to figure out what is this company all about, because there's so many companies that preach a lot of values that at the end of the day have no stick in the company. And I think that I think that for me, at least, if I work at a company that does not believe in what I believe in, and does not want to prioritize the things that make the most sense to me or make me thrive at my job, then I'm most likely not going to be able to thrive in my career in this company. And so with that comes a lot of self-reflection, because first of all, it's not so much about when you look at a company, okay, this sounds good. What resonates with you? And what makes you feel energized when you read it? When you look at a job description, do you think, wow, that is different. That is something that this is a company that I think that I can work for because of this and this and this. I think that when I got out of school, I was so caught up in just trying to find a job and just trying to find an opportunity that was just going to get my experience going. And I was so concerned about falling behind. And now that I think about it, what was I worried about? Because there's no track record. There's nothing that's really about keeping pace. You're not in any race. It's just your life. And so when you think about your job, something that I think back on is when I'm looking for something, I look for a company where I feel like I'll be able to have the best opportunity to thrive in, because if I'm not, then why am I going to be spending 37 and a half at minimum hours in that role? It's probably going to be pretty disappointing if that is the case. That's for me though.
I love that. You've given, I think, our audience something to start to really think about is, are you able to articulate what are the things that you need in order to thrive? And that's such a powerful word, because there's more, when you look at a job statement, it's really easy to ask yourself, can I do it versus can I thrive? And I think we all agree that we rather thrive in the environment rather than do the minimum and be able to meet the objectives. And there's another point too, where you as a candidate, like you said, are challenging companies to actually think about these values that they're promoting. Are they actually operationalized? And what does it look like when they're operationalized? And so it's our responsibility as candidates to really dig a little bit deeper and hold companies accountable for that. Yeah,
absolutely. That interview is not just the company seeing if you can actually complete the job. It's that two-way street, right? It's about you also taking that question period that's allocated for you to figure out if those values that they state they have are something that they actually take into account in practice, and if any other thing that is meaningful to you they align with. So good opportunities there.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to start building a little bit on what Hannah said and around knowing yourself. So what are your values? And not many people can answer that, right, if they're asked like that. So spend some time kind of getting to know yourself and really where you stand. I think that's a really important factor in this. The other thing is when you get opportunities at work, like, say yes, try stuff out. Don't be afraid to try different things out and stretch yourself a little bit. And it's kind of interesting how we're wired, right? Some people will self-select and say, I'm not even going to apply because I don't think I can do it, and others just ignore all of that and just apply anyways, even though they can't do it. So getting to know yourself and kind of understanding where you're coming from, and then being conscious about that. And once you understand what it is that you value, share it with people, because it's about fit. And don't take it as a rejection if somebody doesn't hire you. It truly is about fit in my experience. And if both sides, it makes sense for both sides, it'll be great. If it doesn't, it's better just not to go there.
I love that. And I want to riff on that topic on rejection in a bit, because I think to shift your framework from, oh, I didn't get it, to, oh, it's not a good fit. I know where I am and I'm grounded in who I am. I think that it's a great topic. I feel like we can dive a little bit deeper. Just to close off this question, what was the best career advice that I've ever been given that I've actually operationalized? I think for me, there's two things. I think number one is I was told by a really great mentor. She's always saying, don't make a decision until you have a decision to make. And I pass this on because I see a lot of students going through this, where before they even get a job, they'll see a job description and be like, oh my God, it's in Toronto, but if I take that job and then this has to happen, and then they're thinking, oh, but how do I get a promotion once I get that job, and then I have to do this, and they suddenly think that their life has to be all about that job, and they haven't even applied yet, or they haven't even gotten an interview yet, but they're suddenly making all these decisions and they're ruminating over it, and they get stuck in that narrative. And I'm guilty of it as well, of if I take this, then here's 8 other things that I need to figure out at the same time, where the only decision that needs to be made is, should you apply or not, and what does the best application for you look like? And so that's one thing I would wish students, and kind of like you said, Hannah, you don't have to have it all figured out right now. Where are you right now, and how do you know your values, and what is the decision that's actually in front of you? And finally, the other one that I think that I took away from my mentors is, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. That's a quote from Brene Brown, and I think it applies to so many different things, whether it's really difficult conversations, or how you manage upwards with your managers, or how you make big asks like I did. Of the 3 jobs, the last 3 positions that I've had, I never applied to any of them. There was no job to apply to. They all came from making big asks. I literally got emailed the CEO of a national nonprofit saying, here's where I think you are, here's where I know your strategic priorities are. Here's where I think I can fit into that. It was as clear as I could. There was no, please hire me. There was no, I think I could be a good fit. It was just very, very clear as much as I could. And I see a lot of, and I see a lot of people that say, oh my God, I don't know how to bring this up. I don't know how to have that conversation. What is the clearest thing that you can say that you know to be true? And that's going to be the kindest thing that you can say to that manager or to have that difficult conversation. I'm looking at the comments. Yeah, if any of you have questions, please type it in the chat, and we will we'll continue to harvest some from there. The next thing I'll say or ask each of you is, I think a lot of you on this panel have found a lot of joy and fulfillment in a lot of your career experiences, which is a really fortunate place to be. And I think a lot of students are trying to figure out, they want a job where they do what they love, or they follow their passion. They hear that a lot. But what do you say to those who are struggling because they don't know what their passion is, or they don't know, like, how do I know I love it if I've never tried it? And so they're really stuck in that spot of, I don't know if I'll love it, and if I have to commit, then I have to do this, or my passion is this. How do I turn that into career?
That's a really great question. And I think that I'm just going to pull in what Sunny said in the previous comment there, which was put your hand up and say yes to opportunities that come forward, right? If you've never tried it, how are you to know if it's going to be a good fit for you? And even if you say yes to something, if it doesn't open up a door at that moment, you never know where it's going to lead. And I think that there's so much to be said about just being curious, maintaining that curiosity and trying out new things. And if it doesn't work, okay, that's okay. Let's just pivot and shift our focus to something else. But you're never stuck. And I think that just reminding yourself that you're never stuck is something that is keen. It's hard because we feel pressures from society, from internal pressures, financial pressures. There's so many things that are weighted on our decisions. But at the end of the day, your happiness and your passions need to be prioritized, because that's where fulfillment comes from. And it's hard to be able to figure out where that is, but the only way that you're going to start to figure that out is through trying out new things and taking that time to think about what you think about things. I know it sounds silly, but that reflection piece is actually so impactful to how you show up every day, to how you make your decisions, and to how you identify your path of your career, professional development, or even interests. So I just encourage you to take those moments to think about what you think and to try out new things.
I love that. Connie, it looks like you're about to jump in.
Was a question about how to turn your passion into career?
Yeah, or what do you say to those who are like, I have no idea what my passion is, or they're struggling to figure out, how do I know I'll love it if I haven't tried it?
Yeah, I think I alluded to that, and Hannah has answered that very well. What I'm going to add is, how do you turn your passion into career? So I will again say nonprofit. I'll tell you my current job, how I got it. I have no formal project management experience. I have no PMP. It's like the person that I reach out to, my boss right now, I reach out to him two years ago, and then it's through relationship. Somebody working in the company who knows him, like, can I have an information interview? I really want to be in here doing project management work. So he looked at my resume and go, if I look at your resume, I would toss it. And the reason why is a PhD doing here in electronic arts, in neuroscience? Like, you're so overqualified. I'm like, what? Am I overqualified? I didn't know that. And really, during the interview also, on the questions that I was asked when I was providing examples of what I did as a project management work, all came from my nonprofit work. Those are unpaid. Those were my passion. I do it for fun. And now I've turned that into career. I have many stories of my policy work also, right? So really, like Hannah was saying, try it. If you like it, you continue, you're starting to do it for fun. Then when you apply for the job, you can use those as example. You can use that as your experience. It doesn't need to be a paid experience. Employer will still recognize that.
Love that. I love that. Yeah, knowing yourself, like you said, Hannah, means also knowing that you're malleable and that you are capable at any point in time of growth, of change, and becoming. But I think a lot of us get stuck in that narrative of what if I can't, or this has to be formal, or we place a lot of these constraints on ourselves. But can we burst through that noise and disrupt that noise to say, what is actually real and true in this situation? And can I trust myself that if current me is ambitious, resourceful, ambitious and resourceful, trust that future me is also going to be ambitious and resourceful. So just have that little bit of faith of where you are is okay. And can you get attuned to what's right in front of you and what are you capable of doing in this moment? Yeah, thank you all for sharing that. I saw a question come up where someone mentioned by Terry. I'm actually in the same situation. Had I mentioned I'm feeling the anxiety of not being able to land a job and the pressure to continue to build up as time passes. And I think, yeah, there's definitely a real anxiety and stress given how uncertain life is right now. I think in a normal pre-pandemic, that stress of job hunting is very anxiety inducing, but now we have even more uncertainty with pandemic and work from home and so much anxiety. And I think a lot of us are exhausted from that. And can each of you panelists share a little bit more about how you manage that pressure or that anxiety and how you navigate uncertainty?
That's a really good question. And I, as long as Sunny and as long as we don't mind kind of bringing into this portion here, but I think that, for me, what really helps, managing uncertainty is just knowing that, just reminding myself that nothing is ever certain. Like nothing was ever certain. And I think that for me, when COVID hit, I started to realize just how much that actually had a play in my life, that uncertainty is the way that we live life. Like there's nothing ever certain about today or tomorrow. But at the end of the day, what makes us feel certain is how we show up. And so for me, I think that managing that uncertainty and that anxiety is what has really helped, is about recognizing that in times of which I'm feeling overwhelmed and I'm feeling like I have no control over anything, is I take a step back and I think about what steps can I take today that are in the direction that I want to go. And if that looks like just doing something for me and trying to get myself out of the mindset of anxiety and going for a run or going to see a friend or reading a book, then I'm going to do that. But for me, it's taking that moment to think about what can I do right now that gets me a step forward in the direction that I want to go, and doing at the end of the day what's best for me in that moment, and then continuously reflecting on that as time goes on, and you're realistically going to adjust and shift and pivot many, many times, because there's going to be so many different variables that are going to come across your way, because life is very uncertain. But I think that if we just take a step back out of the big picture and think about what's currently in front of us and being present, which is really hard, but being present and trying to identify what can I do right now, that's something that has helped me.
I love that. Go ahead.
I'll add to that. I mean, there's I feel like there's a false sense of control, where we think we're controlling things, but you're not really controlling anything. You're kind of maneuvering. And I think this whole situation with the lockdown just kind of brought it to light, and it's in our face now, and we have to face it and understand it. I think talking about it is a good thing. So, the counseling, coaching, type of help, but even talking about it amongst friends and having an honest conversation about where you are and how you feel, because lots of people feel the same way. And sometimes you don't think they do. And that sends you, you're like, oh, I'm the one that doesn't get it. No, we're all in that same situation, and sometimes just having that sense of community is helpful. I was going to say something else, and I don't remember what. I'll come back to it if it comes back to me, Jess. But
You bet.
Yeah, I'll give some examples and building on Hannah's and Sunny's great points. So concrete example, myself, when I was deciding, like in December, just a few months ago, I couldn't decide if I should give up my really high-paying job then in pharma to seek back to gaming or not. I was to the point I got so depressed and anxiety that I feel like I'm losing myself. At that time, one thing I did was, I remember one of my friends who know me for more than 10 years is a career coach. I called her up. She gave me a session 2 hours after. After that, I said, wow, if you want to pay for a psychologist for your career-related anxiety, pay a career coach instead. That's way more valuable pay. And then, after that, I decided where I should go. So that's building on Hannah's point of do something what you can do. That's the only thing I could think of I can actually do then. And I have two more examples. So second example is when I applied basically that project manager's position under the sun in EA. I decided on EA because of the culture, Hannah. And I was getting rejection letters, like 3-4 rejection letters a day. That is anxiety inducing to the ultimate. And what can I do? I thought, hey, I could reach out to the person who I did information interview with. I said, hey, I'm applying EA again. And he replies, hey, I'm looking at your resume right now. You come to interview next week, right? Do something you can do right now. And the third one is my friend's example. He's trying to do a career change, totally from technical role to management role that Sunny can really resonate. He is afraid that he wasn't qualified. And he's also going down to this serious anxiety issue that I really worry about his health. Then I said, okay, do something you can do. Grab the job description and line by line, give the example of why you could do this job. It's concrete example that you can say to the interviewer. After he did this exercise, he feels confident again. Oh, I'm only missing 1 or 2, then I can work on this. Do something concrete. For example, like these.
Amazing. It's so interesting that all of you acknowledge that whether we're in a pandemic or not, life is always uncertain. It always has been and it always will. And any action or belief or false sense of security where we think that we can engineer the uncertainty out of things usually means we're out of touch with what's actually in front of us and what's actually what we actually have control over. And there's this quote that said, I never actually had control. All I had was anxiety. And so that behaviors that we usually end up doing when we're trying to engineer that uncertainty out of things is, from what I've seen, is one of two ways. We either overachieve, either we perfect, please, prove, and we keep hustling for that next step and assuming that planning and that hustling to overachieve and perfect is going to save us or kind of protect us from the sting of uncertainty or discomfort, when in reality it just keeps us in a constant cycle of hustle where we have to earn our worthiness at the next point. And it's a false sense of security because perfection doesn't actually exist. And the other one that I've seen, and it touches on what you're saying, Hannah, is that when we're trying so hard to engineer the uncertainty or believe that we can create a false sense of security, we usually engage in behaviors of avoidance where we do everything that we can to ignore or zigzag away from the thing that's really causing a lot of that fear. And so in reality, it's not actually uncertainty itself that's causing us to shut down, it's actually avoidance. And so the trick to get out of those two cycles is to say, what is true about what I'm doing? What is true about my situation right now? And what am I empowered to take on in this moment? And to really acknowledge what is the truth of how I'm feeling, and to say and to wrap words around it to say, am I depleted? Am I going through anxiety right now? resources do I actually need? Because we can't just diminish those things and that anxiety or that angst by ignoring it. We have to actually wrap words around it and be willing to talk about it. And whether that's with our friends, like you said, Sunny, or with actual mental health professionals, and there's no shame in that. In fact, it's probably one of the bravest things any of us can do, which is to actually acknowledge where we're at and to ask for help.
I just want to, sorry. Oh, sorry. Sunny, go for it.
What I was going to add is one of the things that I learned, I did a lot of independent consulting work. And one of the things that you can engineer is your financial kind of foundation. And the advice I got, and it worked great for me, is, you know, I set up a separate like savings account where I put a percentage of my income into to build 6 months worth of living expenses. And once it got to 6 months, I left it alone. And that, as an independent contractor, if you're, you know, between contracts or if a job isn't working out, it just gives you a ton of freedom and confidence, knowing that that's there if you need to turn to it. So you don't take a job out of desperation. And I think you could apply that to anybody really, but, you know, particularly if you're thinking about going into contracting.
I really like that, Sunny. I think I should do that, to be honest. What I was gonna say, Jess, is I was gonna build upon what you were talking about with regards to, you know, kind of create having this false sense of, you know, certainty with how we, you know, how we do life, essentially. And I think that when I was thinking all about, you know, how truly I have no sense, like I have no control over circumstances. There are so many different variables that are put into a circumstance that are outside of my own capabilities. And I think that something that I really was challenged with was thinking about, okay, well, what's the point of goals then? And if there's no certainty that I'm going to be able to get something or achieve something or go somewhere, then why should I set goals? And that really got me thinking, because I'm very goal oriented, and this really challenged how I go through life. And what really helped me when I thought about this was that goals at the end of the day are achievements or milestones that we want to drive ourselves towards because we see fulfillment in achieving that. And something that I recognized as I started to ponder over this challenging thought was that what that looks like is going to realistically shift as we progress through life. And that kind of goes hand in hand with how, because as we shift through life, we are going through all these different pieces of uncertainty that have a play of an effect on how we drive ourselves forward. But what I really came to in that was that goals are still super important to have, even if there are many different conditions and variables that have a play in how and if we're able to achieve them or not. Because at the end of the day, goals are meant for us to feel like we're moving towards something, and that today has value, and that you know, it's a way of us to move ourselves forward in a direction that is most meaningful to us, but being mindful of the fact that that goal can shift, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you failed the other goal. It just means that you have shifted what your definition of success and fulfillment is. And so that's something that also really helped me kind of maneuver myself in my life in the life and era of uncertainty.
I really want to build on that, Hannah, because what I was experiencing, the anxiety and depression in December, was exactly that. Is I have my 5, 10, 20 years old goal and vision on set, and I review it regularly, but I know at that point in time, I was not getting there. And if I'm at my current position, I would never get there. So what do I do? So I remember this advice from my PhD supervisor. She's in psychology. She said, Connie, I want you to write a paragraph on what you want people to say as a eulogy in your funeral. So I went back to look at that, and I said, you know, this is what drove me to change career path in December. Was, oh, okay, the goals that I'm setting right now is thinking of one path, but there are different paths to go to the same eulogy statement. So yeah, so I changed my goal completely, the goal path completely, but the vision is still the same.
Amazing.
It's okay.
Thanks, Connie.
Yeah, it's a thought exercise. Like, what do you want your eulogy says really brings to the forefront? Are you living in alignment with your values? Are you living and are you defining success for yourself, or are you living someone else's definition of success? And it also brings to the idea that you're more than your title. The legacy that you leave behind in whatever organization or the communities that you're part of is going to be more about how you made people feel than anything that you ever did or you said. And so if we can attune to how am I, like you said earlier, Hannah, how am I showing up? Am I showing up in a way that's aligned? Am I showing up in a way that's real and that's true to me? That's when you can make that impact, and that impact gets felt. That's the one I think that leaves the greatest lasting impact. As I think for me, this idea, uncertainty, how do you navigate that anxiety or that angst that comes with, oh my God, life is so uncertain, it always has and always will be. Or, oh my God, there's these so many goals or big goalposts, I'll never be able to achieve them. How do I do that? I think for me, it's the ability to be able to stop and ask myself, am I coming from a place of curiosity or judgment? Because curiosity is the absolute opposite of judgment. Curiosity allows us to integrate our stories to say, how did all these experiences come together? And I don't know why I'm feeling all this anxiety, but I'm willing to ask the question why. And is that actually a true narrative? Versus judgment says, I should have it all figured out. You should blank. You should have, oh, you feel this way because it's your fault, or you feel this way because you're not good enough. And judgment means that we rush to fix, change, perfect, or please, versus actually giving ourselves permission to attune to why are we feeling this way? What is at the root of this? And am I not in alignment with my values, or am I disconnected here? And where did that breakdown happen? I mean, until I can attune to that disconnection and breakdown, I'm going to continue to cycle in this, or feel that wave of judgment, shame, and conclusions that are incredibly intrusive. I want to talk a little bit about kind of what someone mentioned it earlier of I'm scared of falling behind or rejection. And so I want to ask each of you how you deal with that rejection, whether it's rejection or the term keeps getting tossed around, especially with new grads and students, of imposter syndrome. Have you ever been in a situation where you thought, do I actually deserve to be here? Or everyone else here is so much more successful than me. How do I actually contribute here?
Yeah, I think embrace it. That'd be the first thing I'd say to you. So this imposter syndrome thing, lots of us feel it. My ex-boss and I used to talk about it, and he told me he felt it, and I said, "Wow, I felt it too." And so, there's occasions that happen in your career, no matter what your level is, no matter what you're doing, you start questioning things, and it's like, did I get that right? Are people, are people understanding the message I'm delivering? And so it's a natural thing, and I think once you understand that, it's not like, I don't think you can make it go away, but you start understanding it and kind of saying, okay, well, there it is again. It kind of did its thing. So what am I learning from that? What did I gain from it? And so really it's really part of that journey in getting to know yourself better, and why it's showing up. But I think knowing that lots of people go through it is again one of those things that just makes you feel a little bit different. A saying that comes to mind for me is, don't compare your inside to other people's outside. You have no idea what's happening, and they may look all confident and they got it all figured out, but until you get inside their bodies, you don't know.
Yeah,
I really like what you said there, Sunny. And I'm going to pull out the way that we interpret rejection is super important. We have this internal narrative that kind of goes on, that we see, someone saying no to us as rejection. We see rejection as a huge negative. And I'll be like, I think everybody knows it's hard to have someone say no to you. It's really hard. And it's never easy to take it. But it's also a part of life. And it brings us to have a greater sense of appreciation when the things that are aligned with everything that is, you know, I know it's kind of one of those things where, you know, essentially everything that is meant to align in your path, when they start to align, you'll have a greater sense of appreciation for when those opportunities do arise, because you'll see greater value in them. And it's hard though when you're in the spot where you're getting those rejection emails and you can't get a job. You start to think, is something wrong with me? Is something wrong with my experience? I am underqualified. Am I not the top performer here? And I think just remembering, like Sunny said there, don't compare your inside to other people's outsides. At the end of the day, you don't know what those other candidates are bringing to the table. And all you do know is how you showed up and who you are and the experience that you bring to the table. And so what's something that's really helped me through my rejection is not focusing on the rejection itself. Obviously, taking a moment to be sad is also okay and pretty valuable in that moment. But then taking a moment out of that and recognizing what you bring to the table, and then focusing on, you know, what those skills are, and, you know, then looking at other opportunities, because realistically, that's not, if that position wasn't meant for you, then you weren't going to be able to thrive in that opportunity. And so you want an opportunity where that company is going to see you for all the skills you bring to the table, and they value that. And so seeking out other opportunities to see what options are out there and which ones excite you, that's a good distraction. But then that productive part is about thinking about what you bring to the table and focusing on those skills and experiences, rather than trying to think of all those other things that other people bring to the table. That's never going to bring you any productivity to how you feel towards rejection.
I really love this panel. It's really like we're building on each other's messages. I see a thing, and I want to talk about this book called Falling Forward from John Maxwell. And my personal nonprofit right now is called Higher PhD Career Society, and it's basically we're helping PhD who cannot find a job outside of academia to find a job. And then all I'm hearing is all those negative thoughts and I'm not good enough, blah blah, right? But I think the one thing I want you guys to take away is really develop a resilience from failure as early as possible. And this is the best thing for you to do for the more bigger challenges ahead. You think the challenge right now is big. I'm sorry to tell you right now, reality check is only gonna be harder, right? And everybody laugh. It is true. And don't worry, it's something you can practice. It's not like I cannot take failure or I cannot take rejection. You're like that forever. No, you can practice it. Like what Hannah was saying. She changed her mindset. That doesn't come to her one day. She practiced it, right? And this is the biggest determinant of who succeed at the end and who does not. It's not about who fail less. It's who can stand up fast, learn from it, move forward, and practice. You can do it.
I love that. This idea, of when you get rejected, it's so easy to go into, am I enough? Like you said, Hannah, is you start to question your own. Is it me? Am I the common thing? And we start to question and have a little bit of shame and judgment on ourselves to say, is my worthiness in question? Am I enough? And that crush of comparison, like you said, Sunny, which is, it's so hard because comparison it's crushing because it says, how do I best fit in, but also stand out? It's this paradox of be like everyone else, but also stand out. And it's a never ending, it's a zero-sum game. It's a lose-lose game. And so we have to start to catch ourselves to say, what is the narrative I'm telling myself? Is this narrative serving me? How am I showing up when I believe this narrative? And how much time and energy is being exhausted every time I live as though that narrative is true? Or we stay in that narrative comparison or enoughness. I guess I thank all of you for sharing your thoughts on imposter syndrome. I hope our audience can take a lot away from that, of this idea of reframing failure, reframing rejection, reframing how do we get back out there and put ourselves back out there. And I think that's a really valuable thing to note. The last thing I think I'll add on this topic of imposter syndrome is to recognize where at the end, where for individuals, it's not all the time your responsibility to fix your imposter syndrome. I think a lot of conventional career advice says it's your job. You have to speak up. You have to fit in. You have to lean in. But I think what we're starting to learn is perhaps you feel that imposter syndrome because the system hasn't been designed to allow you to feel like you belong. And we have to start to recognize that, like, for those of us who aren't majority culture, who don't fit in the mold of a Eurocentric, white, masculine idea of professionalism, it can be harder for us to combat imposter syndrome because you're literally trying to operate in a system that is designed for you to not fit in. And so rather than continuing to, I think at every career panel I've ever spoken at or sat at, this question of imposter syndrome has come up of how do I fix this? How do I find my confidence? How do I deal with my anxiety? I think we have to also start questioning and hold those leaders accountable to say, what are they doing to create more inclusive spaces, to rewrite that narrative that says professionalism, the idea of what professionalism looks like, no longer doesn't fit to always just be this Eurocentric, masculine, heterosexual, heteronormative view of that. But we have to start to create more inclusive space to say, here are different versions of what professionalism looks like, so people can actually realize that it's not an individual problem for us to fix, but we have to start to name and put responsibility on those who can actually change that system. And so recognizing it's just not this individual problem anymore. I think I'm gonna go into the audience questions. So audience, if any of y'all have questions, start pumping them into the chat, and we'll dive into these audience questions. So one of them I'm seeing by Caleb. What is one question that you asked / was asked during the question time of interview? What made that question memorable or valuable? I think this is, maybe I'm wrong, this is how I'm interpreting this question that's popped up on the screen. I think it is, if you've been the interviewer, i.e. if you've been an HR recruiter, Hannah, what is the question that a candidate has said at the end of the interview when you say, do you have any questions for us? And I think that's what this is asking. I might be wrong and I apologize.
The candidate asking.
Yeah.
I'll touch base on both perspectives. But I think that when I'm interviewing a candidate, when I ask someone, why are you interested in this opportunity, and why specifically with enter company name, I think that question for me as an interviewer is always valuable, because for me, it also goes to show if the candidate itself has done their research on the company on its own. That's one thing. But the second thing is that, because we want, like Sunny was saying at the beginning of our conversation, it's about fit, right? And so when we think about, their answer, I really want to hear about their values and why they're specifically excited about this opportunity with us. And it is okay that, that candidates are applying at many different companies. That's expected. But I think that what's really valuable out of that is that they've taken the time to be selective at which company they've applied for, because if they've done the research to know that that's a good fit for them, then I know that that's one quality already that makes them a stronger fit for us on its own. Don't get me wrong, there's times of which maybe sometimes we haven't done as much research as we might have wanted to. But at the end of the day, that's just a strong way to be able to determine that. And then on the flip side of things, if I'm the interviewee, so I'm the candidate in the interview, if a question that I would want to know is, I always find value in what's your like, what is your favorite, what is something that you love about your company specifically? And I think that question typically tends to hit people differently. It could be about the job, it could be about the culture, it could be about their team, but it's going to give you a different perspective of what is the lived experience of that opportunity, which at the end of the day is going to give you a better understanding on if that's going to be the best fit for you.
Let's see if I can think of something like the values one you touched, Hannah. Some specific, one more general questions. So things like, what can I do first off if I get the job that can relieve your burden the most? You get people talking about, oh, they're actually thinking about priority, and then you get the answer. You start understanding a little bit more about what the job would be like. And another thing that I've tried was, I know I am interviewed by the UX and UI designer. Sorry for people who are not in tech. I learned a lot about it, and I found an article and then asked them about, okay, I saw this article, this quote is quite impactful to me, but I still don't know the differentiation. Could you explain? They got really excited explaining it. And I think that's part of the reason they give me a thumbs up, because they feel positivity against me. I don't know that, Hannah, you can be the better judge of that. Yeah, show that you do your research, I guess.
Amazing. I'm curious it was mentioned earlier, I think by a student or by someone, of how do we think about management and leading others and showing that leadership in the workplace? And many of you have worked in diverse teams, or you work either directly as a manager, Sunny, or with other people managers. What do you think great managers are exceptionally good at? And what skills should we be teaching, practicing, or cultivating if we want great people manager and leaders in our organization?
I think the biggest thing is communication. So communication in all directions. So with your customers, with your team, and I would say in particular, one-on-one, and creating, being able to create a safe space for your people to be able to actually have that conversation with you and say whatever is, in their hearts, not just on their minds, but in their hearts. And, like for me to have a boss that I could have a conversation about imposter syndrome with I was like, well, where did that come from? Like, I don't know that I've experienced that before. And I hugely value to be able to say that openly and not be judged for it, not be like, oh, okay, well, maybe you're not the right guy for the job. I wasn't worried about that because I knew it was a safe space. And I think that's just tremendously valuable skill.
I really want to build on that, Sunny. I think that communication is absolutely one of the most key skills that you can bring as a leader. I also just want to identify that leadership is a skill on its own, and you don't have to be a leader on that. Like, you don't have to be in a leadership position. I think that it's all about how you show up and how you interact with your colleagues. Absolutely, there's going to be roles and responsibilities that leaders are going to be able to, like managers or senior managers, they're just going to have a part to play in. But at the end of the day, a strong leader is made up of many different contributing factors: accountability, communication, like Sunny said. And I think he also pulled out that personalization, creating that opportunity in that space where there's trust. And it's not just a transaction. This is a relationship. And at the end of the day, relationships are built on trust. And I think that all of those have to be considered when we're thinking about a leader. Something that I also think makes up a strong leader is, how do you show up in your team? And are you there to support your team so that they are in a coaching mindset, essentially, to basically build up skills in your team to support them in their growth. What's your mentality? What's your mindset around that topic? Because I think that unfortunately there's a lot of leaders out there who show up to their team by just wanting to get the job done, but that's just that. I don't see that as being a leader. I see that as being I think that obviously there's a portion of the job to need to get the job done, but I think how you show up and how you support your team in the long term really shows up and really speaks more about how strong of a leader you are.
Totally echo the both of you, and I'll say for two parts, like for the bigger team and for direct report. For direct report, the most important thing is I always say to people, find out the intrinsic drive of every of your team member. What drives them personally? That's gonna benefit you big time of when you're trying to negotiate, like, can you do this top project for me? And you have to relate to them and trigger their intrinsic drive so they are motivated to do the job. That's for their career satisfaction as well. For the bigger team, is inspiring vision. You need to practice and make sure that the vision that you deliver is really going to motivate the bigger team.
Relationships. Can you connect with your team? Can you build that trust with them by communicating openly? And I love what you said, Sunny, and that you built on Hannah, that can they say what's in their hearts as well as what's in their head? Because I think when your life works, your work works. And I think a lot of us, at least when I was a young grad, thought, okay, I have to compartmentalize who I am outside of work is so different from who I am at work. But at the end of the day, if your life is working, you can bring that into your workplace and you can start to connect with your managers and your teammates of what's real and what's actually going on. Who are you as a human? I think you're going to start to see way better results and a lot deeper connections with your work and feel more empowered to bring that into the workplace rather than just focusing on who you are is what you do, because I think that's such a false narrative.
I also just want to touch on that and connect it to your point that you made there previously, Jess, about belonging. And I think that if we see in our leadership that it's okay to show up as exactly who you are, by them leading by example, there'll be a stronger sense of belonging brought to the table and brought to the dynamic of the work and of your team, which will, at the end of the day, like you said there, Jess, just bring a stronger impact to whatever you're doing and a greater sense of happiness and achievement and success and all of those great things that we all want in our professional lives and personal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that sense of belonging touches, again, have you done your own work to say, have your own reflection? What do you need to thrive? Who are you? What are your values? And have you done your homework with the employer to say, do you align with this? Is this a place where I can actually show up? Do they allow that? Do they foster that? And I think belonging is such a powerful word, especially when we talk about our workplaces, because we think, oh my God, I can't show emotion at work, or I can't show who I really am. I can't show that personality. When really belonging means you have to belong to yourself first, to really say, I'm going to be who I am, not change who I am. And that takes a lot of confidence. That takes a lot of self-reflection. So do you know who you are so you can belong to yourself first? Then when you're put in situations like a workplace, you can show up as that. Because the opposite of belonging is actually fitting in. Fitting in says, how can I assess and acclimatize? How can I assess what should I talk like? Here's what I should dress like. Here's what I should look like in order to fit in. And that's a really hard hustle to maintain, versus belonging means you show up as you are. Yeah. Okay. I'm getting two questions here about relationship building and sustaining it. And so can each of you kind of touch on whether it's role of your network and how you maintain it, or mentors in your life and how you maintain that mentorship relationship? But especially whether it's COVID or otherwise, how do you actually continue that for the long term? I think maybe you've had that LinkedIn conversation, you maybe had one coffee chat. Do you go back to them? If so, how often? Do you have a purpose? Like, how do you actually make sure that they stay in your network? Or is it okay for them to drop off? how long of a drop off before you can pop back in? How do each of you navigate the building of that network and your focus there?
Well, I wish I'd written. I had more data to go off of because it's very organic for me, networking, and so I don't know if I can answer those specific kind of things, but I'll just talk more in generalities. Firstly, let me start with 80%, maybe 90% of the roles that I've had in my career were through networks. So very few through like, cold interview kind of thing. And so the importance of it is tremendous. And these are people that get to know you and they're not making sure you get the job. They're making sure you get the interview or helping you get the interview. Right. And the rest of it's really up to you. So it's, and that's valuable in this day and age. But in terms of keeping those networks alive, like, to me, it is important to connect with people regularly and not just when you're looking for stuff. I know as a person who does that, like when I don't hear from somebody for a year, 2 years, then they're like, hey, do you have a minute? I'm looking at this job. And I'm like, really? Now you're remembering me? It doesn't land well. And so being in the receiving side of that, I know better on the other side of it. And I think I always did, but you always kind of make those, it's more about building that relationship and keeping that relationship going versus looking for favors. The other side of it is bring value to the table. Like when I talk to people, I'm sharing my experiences too. So it becomes a mutually beneficial situation where they're learning from me and I'm learning from them. And maybe when you're starting out your career, it's a little bit harder, but as you go through your career, typically the people you're networking with are also kind of maneuvering in the same direction. And so your conversations keep helping each other along, and that keeps it really sustainable.
Oh, I was so echoing with Sunny that 100% of my jobs, and you see that I change up a lot, all from networking. None of them are from it's just people asking me to apply. I didn't look for the job. And then echo on the giving more than taking. I know it's a old saying, but really pays well. When I needed something, I have a phone call, a text message, I'll get it because I've always been giving 99% of the time, right? It will pay off. And recently I wrote a LinkedIn message out of inspiration of one of my mentors message to me. She texted me and said, I want this, venture capital award. I was so happy and I realized why I always go out of my way to help this particular mentor, really out of my way. It's because she always tell me every success she had. It doesn't need to thank me. You telling me you'll succeed because of whatever I did before is rewarding enough for me as a mentor. And then you tell them what you did with their advice and quickly. So I don't many mentors I've seen that just, I give them the advice and then go off 3 months later, they come back with the same problem. Like, then why am I wasting my time? Right? Show them you treat their advice seriously and you did something about it. Failure or succeed doesn't matter. Tell them how it goes.
I really like what you said there, Connie and Sunny. It's truly both. I echo completely. I just want to add on top, just be yourself and be personable. I think that we've touched base on this a little bit earlier on, but we're showing up as always asking for something or being very transactional. I always like to think about how do I establish a relationship with a friend, right? Like, how does that relationship get developed and built? It's like anything, right? So if I'm thinking about a professional networked connection, relationships are built through the exact same way, right? It's through trust, it's through personal connection, it's through continued connection and celebrating wins and thanking and showing gratitude. That's all. It's the same thing. It's just a different line of light. So no buts. Sunny and Connie really took it away with great takeaways. So.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I think for me, mentors have played such a big role in my life, and I think the one thing that I've noticed that has kept those as strong as they have is what one of my mentors calls the loop back. is every time you meet with your mentor, they give you some advice, and you go off and you go do it. Even if it's been 2 months or 3 months that it's taking you to implement, if something good comes out of that, or if something bad comes out of that, send them that update email to say, hey, this is what happened. This is what I learned. This is how I appreciated your advice. It shows them that their advice isn't just words to you, that you actually value their time enough to go do it and to loop them back. And even if there's no action from you there, it's just really nice to know, to give that, like you said, gratitude, and to celebrate that one, to say, hey, your words matter. I've listened. Here's what happened to me. Because I think a lot of our mentors take a lot of pride in their mentees, and they love seeing their mentees flourish. So I don't think there's very many mentors who are good mentors that would hate hearing from a mentee that says, hey, here's the awesome things that happened to me. So don't be afraid to do those reach outs. I know we're coming up to time, and so before I wrap up and pass it back to our organizers, for each of you, where can people find you and connect with you if they have follow-up questions, or if you're like, no, don't contact me, that's fine. But where can they best find you, whether it's email or LinkedIn or Instagram? How can people reach out?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn for sure.
Yeah, LinkedIn for sure. My phone's been buzzing for the last half hour as people keep connecting from this chat. So
Good job, guys.
yeah.
That's hilarious. I think I'm the only balance that'll say, please don't reach out to me on LinkedIn. If you want to reach out to me, send me an Instagram DM, because I honestly, in my line of work, I do more work there. And I don't answer a lot of LinkedIn messages for the fact that I get so many of them. And it's hard when I've never met any of y'all to know, where does this kind of connection coming from? So I'll say, you can follow me on Instagram or find me at JTANG7, at JTANG7. Thank you so much, panelists and audience, for your engagement in the comments and in the questions that were brought up. I'm going to pass it over to Lisa.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all of the panelists. It was absolutely incredible. I feel like I gained so many amazing brain nuggets and gems to hold on to and think about in the future. So for the participants, we have a few questions for an Amazon gift card giveaway for $25. So the first person in the chat to say the answer will win. We have a couple of quotes that are from the panel, so I hope you were all paying attention to those amazing brain nuggets like I was. So the first question we have here is, what is one type of freedom that you can engineer? So this is when we were sort of talking about, uncertainty and yeah, so go ahead and type the answer in the chat. If anybody remembers, what type of freedom can we engineer? I'll give you a hint. This is a quote from Sunny. Oh, yes, amazing. Amir, great job. Please go ahead and DM me with your email address and I will follow up with you. All right, so the next question that we have is, when we were speaking about imposter syndrome, there's an amazing quote, don't compare your blank to other people's blank. Don't compare your blank to other people's blank. When we were speaking about imposter syndrome.
Actually, do the other panelists know who that's from? It's not mine. I repeated it from someone. I can't remember from where.
I thought you said it, Sonny. I really like that one.
But it's actually by somebody more famous than me.
Now it's you.
Yeah, Asma, I see you're first. Thank you so much for typing so quickly. Please send me a DM with your email address and I will follow up with you. And our last question today is, when communicating, what can you do to make sure it's kind? As a hint, this was a Brené Brown quote. So for you Brené Brown fans, you might have an edge here. When communicating, what can you do to make sure it is kind? Brené Brown. type it in the chat. Kazi, amazing. Good job to Kazi. Please send me a DM.
Actually, Gloria is.
Oh, you're so right. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Gloria.
Sorry, Kazi.
Good job. Good job, Gloria. Send me a DM with your email address and I will follow up with details. So that concludes this amazing panel. Again, thank you so much to all the panelists for your time and your words of wisdom. To the attendees, our networking session is starting now. So go ahead and hit the networking tab on your left-hand side. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
for having us.
everyone.